Hello, this is my response to the film Before Sunset by Richard Linklater. One of the first things that I noticed was that Jesse's TV show idea that he talks about in the beginning of the movie. It kind of goes with the movie itself. His movie idea is about just following normal people for a year, one new person each day. And this movie kind of does the same just for one day instead of a whole year. It also reminded me of the film Slacker, which also just follows the lives of normal people. The second thing, I'm gonna number them from now, is to be open. They start talking to two random guys and they just get tickets to a play. And even though they don't use them, I think it's a nice example of how you get a lot of good stuff just by being open to the world and to people. Number 3, sometimes Celine and Jesse are not in the center of the frame. They are just like they're just people like everyone else, so they're not always centered in the film. And I think that underlines the theme of the movie, that they're just people like everyone else and that everyone has a story. Number 4 is a thing Celine said that I liked. She talked about how she thought she would fall in love more as she got to know a person, that as she got to know their habits and every day, as she got to know how they would respond, she'd fall even more in love. The fifth thing I noticed was Celine talking about a man she once worked for who was 52 and who was devastated as he realized that he had spent his life just for himself. He hadn't lived for anything or for anyone, and it was just terrible to him that he felt his life was for nothing because he hadn't lived for anyone else. And I think that's one of the important points of the movie, the importance of being something for someone else. The movie is about searching for a connection, as Jesse and Celine also talk about. Celine mentions at one point that she believes that if there is a God, then God exists in the space between two people. And I think that's one of the major takeouts from the movie, that trying to understand someone else is one of the most important things you can do with your life. This is my response to Before Sunset. The first thing I noticed, like the other one, that again, Linklater lets his main character introduce the idea of the movie, and this time it's with Jesse's book. He wrote a book about him meeting Celine again, and then that's what happens in the movie. So we always kind of get a sense of what the idea with the film is. I thought the film had a lot of relatable thoughts and ideas, and I liked when Celine talked about how she was in a communist country in Eastern Europe, and even though it was very strict, she felt freedom of the mind because there was nothing to distract her. I thought that was an inspiring idea in these times, especially when the internet is trying to distract you with a lot of, like, trying to scare you because of Corona, with news all everywhere, and it's just important to sometimes shut it all out and be with yourself instead. Another idea that I related to was having a lot of plans and just never getting around to doing any of it. That's definitely familiar. And Jesse mentions this thing, how we always want something better instead of being satisfied with what we have, how it's both human but also kind of depressing that we always want more. And then one thought that was definitely relatable was the idea that maybe especially as a young person, you think that someday in the future you're gonna have your shit together, and that never happens. And I still believe that someday in the future my life is gonna, everything is gonna work out, but I know deep down it's not true, because 10 years ago I was thinking the same about this age I have now. So it's just funny how the human mind does that sometimes. I thought it was a great movie. It was very realistic. The dialogue was really well written. It seemed very natural. They had really good chemistry. And they were great actors, both of them. They can go on talking for a long time, like long scenes. So, yeah. So far, I think they're both very good movies. These are my thoughts about Before Midnight. The first thing I noticed was that this film has more characters than just Celine and Jesse. And I think this is because their relationship is no longer just about them. Now it's also about children that they need to take into consideration. So this has made their relationships even more complex. And this is part of the struggle that they're dealing with in this third movie. There is some foreshadowing in the beginning of the movie when Celine and Jesse are in the car. Celine says that this is the beginning of the end of their marriage, and we see towards the end that the sun is setting and then it's gone, and we can wonder if their relationship, if the sun has also set on that, or if it's gonna rise again. We don't really know. They seem to end up happy, but we don't know if they're gonna end up divorcing because of the problems they have. But it definitely shows how someone has, or both have to sacrifice something in a relationship, and their trouble is if it should be Celine's job opportunity or if it should be Jesse getting closer to his son. A thing they talk about in the movie is love and technology, and how this affects love from now on. They have a discussion about that, which was interesting. And you can ask, like, would they have been together? What would their relationship have looked like if they had access to the technology that we have now back when they met? Then I think time is a very important theme in these three movies, but especially this one. It's a real-time film almost, and we see how time has changed their relationship and how it has changed themselves. They're still themselves, but they're also different in some ways. And the actors, of course, age and change along with them. And I think time is what sometimes bothers the characters, that they're aging and time is slipping away so fast, and it's making them realize how precious life is and how rare it is to find a special connection with someone. This is my response to the video material. I liked how it pointed out that the trilogy has done a lot to represent both sides equally, and how it has included both actors to participate in the making of the script. And it's true that the beginning of the first film is very fairy tale like. Even though it has realistic dialogue, it's still a fairy tale version of two people meeting each other. Then the video also points out how their conversations change throughout the three films. In the first one, they talk a lot about philosophy, and dreams and what they want to do in life, all stuff like that. And then the next one moves on to a bit more adult stuff, like their careers and success in life and relationships, and even more so in the final one. And it's also nicely pointed out that there are not a lot of films that cover what happens after the happy ending. So in the third one, that's what we see, that's like the next step after the happy ending. And an important thing that they also noted that that conflict can bring them even closer, because conflict lets them tell each other what's important to them and makes them connect on an even deeper level. It also pointed out that the final movie challenges our romantic ideas, but yet it maintains romance. They still try to work on their relationship and try to have romance, even though they have a lot of other stuff to think about. And I love that it also points out that they still have a connection, even though they fight a lot in this last movie. And I think that's one of the things I'm learning from this trilogy, is that conflict is not necessarily bad. It can have a lot of positive effects too. One of the other videos also replays something from the first movie. It's what's her name? Celine saying that if there's any magic in the world, it's when two people connect, when two people try to understand each other sharing something. And I think that still goes for the last movie, that it still has this magic, that even though they have conflict, they're still connecting on a deep level. The interview with Richard Linklater I found interesting too. I found it inspiring how he lets his actors contribute, and I think this helps make the dialogue more realistic, that it's not just a script they have to follow strictly. They can tell what sounds natural and what would these two people be talking about. So I like his leadership style, that he includes people. These are my thoughts about the series as a whole. I thought the characters were great, and I identified with them and a lot of their conversations. I liked how there was not a good and a bad character, but they were both people trying to figure everything out, and they both had good and bad sides to them. I think the time span was great for showing how an actual relationship evolves and works, and I think this also allowed the actors to do a better performance, because they were the same age as the characters and evolved along with them. I think the time span also shows how a relationship evolves and changes. In all three movies they talk about life, but it's in different ways, and they have different background experience when they talk about life. So in the last one, they of course have a lot of more experience, and so their conversation changes because of that. I didn't enjoy the last one as much as the others, because there was so much fighting in it, but yet it was powerful, because it also showed how much deeper their relationship was, even though they had conflicts. And it showed that they knew each other even better, and they seemed to have a strong connection despite conflict, maybe because of conflict, because their conflicts helped them know more about each other. So the overall takeout for me is about connection. It's about how rare it is to find connection, and how wonderful it can be, and how important it is to take care of that connection when you find it. And I think that's what these three movies show.